Bullying is something a lot of people unfortunately encounter in their lives, especially during their youth. A especially drastic case is the topic of today's review. Liverleaf, also known as Mizu Mizu, based on the manga, the movie explores the story of Haruka, a pupil who gets bullied by her classmates, led by a former friend. Haruka and her family come back to the town after having been in Tokyo for a while. Soon the bullying starts and gets worse and worse. It begins with insults, it soon pushes the limits of what is acceptable teenage behavior though. Haruka's possessions are mistreated, a dead animal is placed on her desk, and her father is pushed down a flight of stairs, when one of the bullies is kicking him with spiked shoes. The parents are already thinking about moving back to Tokyo when the family gets viciously attacked at home. The house is set on fire, the parents die and Haruka's sister is badly injured and in critical condition. Haruka has enough and finally fights back. Eventually a couple of the bullies are cornering her and tell her that they killed her parents, and almost her sister as well. And now it's her time to die. And with that, Haruka's brutal revenge starts, and it's bloody. The movie begins in the first half as a rather slow bullying teen drama, with some really despicable characters. But once the killing starts, it turns into a real brutal splatter movie. Eventually it also turns into a psycho thriller when the backgrounds, actual relations and mental states of everyone who is still alive at this point are revealed. The acting is pretty good and often restrained, but then there are also moments which show really manga and anime-like moments, which are quite over the top, not only in regards to the splatter, but also the presentation. The splatter and visual effects are a mixed bag. There's a permanent snowing effect at some point, which just looks like a cheap plugin effect for whatever editing software they were using. It's especially odd as the people on the screen stay in the snow while it's snowing. There's nothing on their clothes or hair for most of the time. Same goes for the environment, but the characters are the most obvious in this regard. The splatter effects are also pretty odd. The first kill shows how one of the bullies gets a nail in her eye, but it looks so bad that it will take you out of the movie immediately. It looks like they just put one of these eye gum candies on her eye and put some fake blood on it. There are some actual good effects when people get stabbed, but sometimes it's really odd and off-putting, and not in the way that it was supposed to be. The actual fights against the bullies are quite odd as well. There's nothing clever or terribly exciting when Haruka fights the bullies. She often just stands somewhere and the bullies either panic or attack her and fail miserably. She also pulls out something from under the snow in the last moment and attacks the bullies way too often when they have the upper hand. Liverleaf offers a pretty wild genre mix. It's not quite a Predator or From Dusk Till Dawn when it switches genres, but it's at least a bit similar when it switches from drama to revenge splatter movie. I have to say though, the movie is with almost 2 hours just too long, and trimming it, especially in the first half, would have helped. There's quite a bit of setup, but having something more interesting happen or change up the pacing by showing some things that happen later on might have helped. But to be honest, I think trimming the first half would have helped already. It's a movie with a provocative, controversial story, as these kids are killing each other in pretty brutal ways, which is most likely not for everyone. If you already had issues with movies like Super Dark Times or Summer of '84, this is nothing for you. It also gets pretty dark when it explores the psychology of two of the characters further, something which I will explain now, so if you want to avoid spoilers, skip ahead to the verdict. I will timestamp this video so you can just skip ahead. The timecode will also be in the description. In the second half, we learn why Haruka's former friend, the leader of the bullies, is hating her. She actually has feelings for Haruka and starts bullying her when she returns from Tokyo, and because she is falling for a boy. Haruka's former friend felt rejected and hated Haruka when she realized that she will never be together with her. Actually, Haruka's former friend also never wanted to kill Haruka or her family. She did bully her viciously and encouraged her gang to do the same, but she never wanted to actually kill or seriously injure anyone. She still started the tragic course of events though. But there's also another bullying victim, which just goes insane at some point. She gets tormented by the bullies and eventually suggests to burn down Haruka's house, and kills the parents. She's always seen with the bullies, and near the end we learn that she is in love with Haruka's former friend. and that's why she stayed with the bullies and eventually decided to attack Haruka's family, as she thought that's what Haruka's former friend wanted. Eventually, the other bullying victim starts to kill people herself and brutally attacks Haruka and her former friend, even though more death isn't necessary, and she did love Haruka's former friend. But it gets even more bizarre and insane. Haruka gets close to another boy in school who also moved to the town after his parents died, and now he lives with his grandma. He seems to be the only good thing for Haruka, but right before the final confrontation, we learn that he has beaten his father to death as he was beating up the mother. He then started to beat his mother as he says she wanted it. This seems to be only in his warped perspective though, as his violent side is revealed when we see him talk with his grandma, after speaking with Haruka. When the camera pans down and reveals the grandma on the floor, she is on the brink of death, beaten to a bloody pulp, and the boy talks very calmly to her, seemingly being in another world, while his hands are still bloody. He is a delusional psychopath. In the end, there is a final confrontation with Haruka, the boy, and the other bullying victim. The boy tells Haruka that he will stay with her when the bullying victim wounds Haruka. The boy tells Haruka that he will stay with her and that he made plans already and that they would just be together and don't need their grandparents. Haruka is confused and reluctant, and she doesn't quite understand why he is so determined to be with her. Then the bullying victim appears and wounds Haruka. The boy then kills the bullying victim, and during the fight, pictures of Haruka's dead parents are scattered on the ground. The pictures were made by the boy, who saw the parents die and didn't help. He also beat up Haruka's grandpa, with which he stayed since her parents were burned to death. And his psychotic side is shown in front of Haruka, who eventually kills him. Wounded, Haruka lays down in the snow and we cut to the graduation. There are some empty chairs and eventually the camera pans to the leader of the bullies, Haruka's former friend. She has survived and she eventually walks through the school to her old classroom and remembers happier times she had with Haruka. Liverleaf is an interesting mix. A brutal film with bloody deaths involving teenagers, which probably will shock most people. It has a lot of things that work well, but also some obvious flaws. The acting is pretty good. The effects are mixed bag. The first half drags and the second half might be too violent for most people. It is labeled as a horror movie due to the splatter, but it's not scary in the conventional sense. Even though the reveals in the second half, especially with the boy, are unsettling. It is hard to recommend this to anyone though. It's not your usual revenge or splatter movie. It's not quite an extreme movie either, and it's often quite cheap in certain regards, which really holds the movie back at times. I have to say that I did kind of like the movie though. The relations which the characters have and revelations in the second half are interesting and well written. When the splatter is done well, it's pretty gnarly and overall it is well filmed and acted. On the other hand, it is too long and feels cheap at times, to the point that it takes you out of the movie. It's a movie that is also quite hard to get, but it's an interesting one. Those who would like to explore revenge movies which are very different to your John Wicks or Takens, and who would rather watch something like Revenge, a Love Story, or similar movies, can take a look at this. It's really just a shame that it didn't have a slightly bigger budget to improve on some things. With that said, I will give Liverleaf a 6 out of 10.